Electrocast.
Why wait to see if you'll get something you like this Valentine's Day when you can go to BlueNile.com and find something you'll love? Whether you're looking to treat yourself to a little winter sparkle or show a galentine how much you appreciate them, Blue Nile offers a wide selection of high-quality designs, expert guidance, and free 30-day returns for the ultimate peace of mind. You can even design your own jewelry. Right now, save up to 50% at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. From the launch your online shop stage, all the way to the we just hit 1 million orders stage. No matter what stage you're in, Shopify's there to help you grow. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/special offer, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/special offer.
On this episode of Missing the Point, we're joined once again by the lead beat writer of the New England Patriots for the Boston Herald, Karen Guriegien, to help us preview the New England Patriots 2021 season. We'll take a look at the quarterback battle between Cam Newton and rookie Mac Jones, N'Keal Harry's impressive camp showing after requesting a trade, the improved Patriots defense, and where we think the Patriots will be come the end of the season. This is Missing the Point, episode 78. But it's all relative.
Welcome to Missing the Point. I'm Joe Malkin, joined by Mike Marcangelo, and back for her second appearance on the show. Link to the first episode that she was on in the show notes. The Boston Herald's Patriots beat writer since 2007, Karen Guriegien. Karen has covered all the Boston sports teams, 2 Winter Olympics, men's and women's professional golf, tennis, and soccer. Karen, thank you once again for coming on the show and talking to us. When we're recording this, it's the day before the Patriots' first preseason game against the Washington football team, a name that has caught on with everyone. And I guess we'll start off with the first question. How's everything in Foxborough?
Well, moving right along. Last year with the pandemic and everything, there were no preseason games. There were barely practices to watch or players to talk to. That was at least in person. So a lot of things have changed. And from that perspective, for the better and for the good, and hopefully it stays that way. And I think there's a little more buzz about this team than the one last year that we chatted about.
Yeah, and a lot has changed in the 4 months since we last sat down with you. I mean, the last time we talked to you, Cam Newton had signed back with the team that was fairly fresh, and Bill went on a huge spending spree. And now we've gone through the draft, which happened a couple weeks after we spoke to you last. And, the quarterback taken in the first round by the New England Patriots. And we were coming fresh off of a Tampa Bay Super Bowl in which Tom Brady was the Super Bowl winning quarterback again. And, it's amazing how far we've come with no football regarding football. So one thing I just mentioned is the Tampa Bay Super Bowl. And we've talked about this a little bit, but do you think that Bill Belichick is going to push a little bit harder to be successful this season in the immediate aftermath of Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers winning the Super Bowl?
He won't admit it. He wouldn't admit it on a lie detector test. Truth serum wouldn't get it out of him. But I do think somewhere deep down, maybe not so deep down, he kept score. He saw what Brady did. And he keeps hearing now that, it was more Brady than Belichick, and Brady's getting all the credit, and Brady is subtly or not so subtly kind of needling that narrative. And so, yeah, I would suspect that somewhere under the hoodie, Belichick wants to kind of bring things back in a positive direction for himself and the Patriots.
And that's been, it's kind of a silly question. After I asked it, I'm like, of course he wants to be successful, but, is he going to push that much harder with the team that he has? And there's been a lot of good things coming out of camp that we've seen in the last, week and a half that they've had camp. All the new guys are there. Obviously on defense, you have the Judons, and on offense, you have, Kendrick Bourne and Nelson Aguilar. So, you've been able to see these guys out on the field, and offensively, which was a sore spot with this team in 2020. Throwing the ball and being able to get it to receivers was an issue for what we believe was an injured Cam Newton. Who is the New England Patriots' number one receiver going into 2021, and why is it not N'Keal Harry?
Well, prior to him missing time recently, I would say Nelson Aguilar. He looked really good early in camp. He looked very good in mini camp. And then all of a sudden he's kind of faded away. But I think injury might have something to do with that. But it's clear that, again, from the practices that we've been able to see every single day, at least early on, he's got speed and he can beat one-on-one coverage, but he's not just run down the field, get by whoever deep threat. He's, they can use him all over the field, and he looked really good in crossing patterns and all kinds of, different ways than just straight line run down the field. So I think he's a little more polished receiver than perhaps his reputation. So I would definitely put him as the number one, assuming he's healthy.
Would it be fair to say that Cam might also target one of the tight ends more than a receiver? Because when you look at this roster, I saw that question and I thought it might not even be a receiver. It could be Jonnu Smith or Hunter Henry if he gets his panes of glass taped back up and he can actually play 16 or 17 games.
Well, a little early to be going in Hunter Henry's story.
But what are the odds that this is a breakout year for John?
Well, I agree with your assessment that he might be the top gun and the top guy, and that's just based on what I've seen and how he's been used and the frequency. Both Newton and Mac Jones go to him as either an outlet or down the field or across the field, or I guess I'm not supposed to give away all these little trick plays. We're not supposed to report on those things, but let's just say they've been using Jonnu in a variety of ways, both across the line and in the backfield, and that might be saying too much.
Well, I think our listeners would know that that's the old Aaron Hernandez way. That's the most comparable comparison, right? Is that you're going to have a dedicated tight end in Hunter Henry, who will wind up be a blocking tight end again if he can be there. And then Jonnu Smith can just go everywhere on the field for the offense.
He can block too. Let me tell you, I've seen him level people already. Yeah.
He's a big boy. And in that same vein, because, Joe had mentioned, obviously we drafted Mac Jones. I was thinking about this. This is Bill's first real quarterback competition since 2001, right? We know that he thought Brady was the best on the practice field, but he went with Drew because Drew was a known commodity. In your opinion, how do you think Bill Belichick has handled this quarterback controversy or decision-making process so far?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a controversy yet.
Yeah.
But it might be shaping up to be one. Let me put it that way. A lot of people are calling it a competition.
Yep.
I'm calling it a countdown. Basically, Cam's the guy, and it's just a matter of time before Mac jumps over him. So it's kind of a countdown. And I mean, he is a first round pick, number 15 overall. So everyone knows, Cam included, that Mac Jones is the quarterback of the future. I think it's just a matter of how long Cam can hold him off. How is Bill Belichick going about it? Well, it's interesting that the reps are similar, almost equal, if not even more for Mac Jones. And some people would kind of scratch their head at that, like, the starter needs the majority of the reps. But this is such a different situation. You have a starter in Cam who last year was the 30th ranked quarterback in QBR. And obviously there were things conspiring against him last year, joining them late, getting COVID, trying to learn the offense on the fly. So, coming back from numerous injuries. So, maybe that wasn't the fairest year to assess him. But that being said, he's not somebody like Brady where Brady shows up and he's the guy, end of story. They have to know what they have in Mac Jones for two reasons, at least in my view. One, can he overtake Cam? Number one, can he learn fast enough? Can he grasp everything he has to do to leap him? And if not, will they feel comfortable enough for him to be the sole number 2 backup so they don't have to carry 3 quarterbacks? And I think that's a very important distinction. And they can't find that out if Cam's taking 80% of the snaps and he's taking 20.
You mentioned not having to carry 3 quarterbacks, and that's very interesting to me because right now the quarterbacks coach for the New England Patriots is listed as Josh McDaniels on the website, which is fine. However, you mentioned 3 quarterbacks. The third quarterback on this roster right now is Brian Hoyer, who we know was always someone that Tom Brady would mention in post games. He'd mention in interviews that Brian Hoyer was a big asset to this team. Something we've seen in the past is that maybe Cam Newton doesn't pick up offenses as well as other quarterbacks do. So with Mac Jones developing, and I was thinking, should I ask her if she thinks he's an NFL ready quarterback right now? I won't put you on the spot, but is Brian Hoyer there as the third quarterback to essentially bring him up to speed and get him to that level? And Cam Newton kind of knows his role, as you mentioned, that maybe prior to 2020 when he signed, he knew that he was just the bridge guy.
Well, I'll attack this from a couple of places. Number one, there's no question Hoyer was brought back because he's just, at least at this juncture, a much better mentor for Mac Jones. Because believe it or not, after Tom Brady and maybe Josh McDaniels, there's nobody out there who knows the offense better than Brian Hoyer. He's been here so many times. And like through the ages and through the years where things have, where they keep expanding and expanding and expanding. So from that perspective, he's such a good guy. And you can see it during practice too, that, if Jones has a bad moment, Hoyer's right in his ear. If Mac Jones does something good, there's Hoyer again. He's encouraging him or pointing out things and helping him along. It's hard to expect Cam Newton, who's fighting for his life and fighting for his job, to really tutor and mentor someone who's going to take his job. Although I must say, Cam has been very supportive of him. The other role, there's actually a couple roles. The other role that might keep Brian Hoyer on this team is he's been such a good, as the number 2 and sometimes number 3, a very good scout team quarterback week to week. The scout team quarterback prepares the defense and basically mimics the other quarterback or the other offense. And Brian Hoyer has been so good in that role. I mean, they kept him here last year. Jarrett Stidham was here last year. Jarrett Stidham is still around, but he just had back surgery, and it'll be interesting to see if he's healthy, if they don't just IR him the whole year or if they bring him on. Here's the one asterisk I'll put into the equation that might go against having them just keep 2, aside from what Brian Hoyer does for the scout team. And again, if you want Mac Jones to learn, do you want him on the scout team or do you want him taking reps with Cam as the number 2? So that's why Brian Hoyer serves a purpose, although they could get somebody on the practice squad to do it. But here's the other thing. What happened last year when Cam went down? COVID. COVID is still lurking. And it might wipe out 1 quarterback, 2 quarterbacks. I mean, who knows how many quarterbacks it might wipe out. Look what happened to Denver. They were playing a wide receiver at quarterback. So that might necessitate them keeping more than two.
They kept more than two quarterbacks or more than three quarterbacks on an active roster was in 2001.
Brady's here, yeah.
When Brady was the number 4 to begin the year. So,
and he was fast of the floor during training camp.
And it's so interesting to, and people now are comparing, and this is just a quick rant, but comparing Mac Jones to what Tom Brady was back then. And it's like, we just can't do that anymore, because that hindsight is so, I've said this before on the show, to look back in 2001, and if anybody can honestly tell me that when Tom Brady stepped onto that field after Drew Bledsoe was taken out by Mo Lewis, that the season was going to go the way it was and he was going to have the career, I would have told you were crazy, because there was no predicting that. And you can't do that with Mac Jones either. Now, you mentioned Brian Hoyer being on the other side of the ball, playing the scout team quarterback.
Can I jump in for 1 second?
Yeah.
That thought as you were reeling off information. Brady, his first couple of years, the writers who watched training camp those years raved about him and thought he was, again, better than Drew Bledsoe at that time during the training camp window.
Right.
Whether people could predict how great he was going to be, probably not. But there were signs during that training camp, according to those who were there, that Brady was going to be good. I was asked today by somebody, have I ever seen a rookie quarterback in the Patriots midst get so many reps? And the answer was no, or be such a fast learner and so fast tracked. And again, the answer is no. But I think the circumstance and the fact that he's a first round draft pick kind of dictate him getting the reps. Whereas, Jared Stidham was a 4th round pick. Why are you going to, use up his reps? Well, except Tom Brady was there. So I just think circumstances, reflect the snaps he's getting, but also he's handling the work. And that's another reason.
Yeah, I was going to say, last time that you were on, Karen, we all hypothesized or speculated that we thought that Bill and Josh were going to draft someone that was more like Cam, right? That was the mobile-ish type of quarterback, right? And then they took, they didn't move up to pick Justin Fields like I had hoped that they would do, and they took Mac Jones. So how surprised were you about that pick? And now that you've had some time to see him in person, did they make the right decision?
Well, it was so hard to, when looking at all the quarterbacks and watching their college film and seeing what each one of them does, Mac Jones, in theory, was the perfect fit. But he was like the perfect fit for the Tom Brady offense that they've been playing for the past 2 decades. Without question, he, in that scenario, and a lot of people were predicting they were going to take Mac Jones from jump for that very reason. But when Bill brought Cam back, it almost seemed to be kind of at cross purposes. Why would you get a drop back pocket passer when the guy in front of him is a mobile read option, pass run option type quarterback who's mobile? It didn't make a lot of sense to me. But again, what do I know?
Bringing that full circle a little bit, it's very interesting that you brought that up, and Mike brought up the Aaron Hernandez style offense that they ran when Hernandez and Gronkowski were here. That is kind of the offense they're looking to get back to. And it's so interesting because they wanted to run that offense with Tom Brady. They did run that offense with Tom Brady with a drop back quarterback. Now, Cam allows that extra dynamic of being able to move as long as his feet are as long as he's healthy. I mean, that's the thing, is we can talk as much about the quarterbacks as we want, but if Cam Newton is healthy and he's 2016 Cam, even not the year after his MVP season, then we're doing pretty well for ourselves. But if they go back to that offense and they really we talked about this back in April, that signing Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, bringing in Kendrick Bourne, Nelson Aguilar, they're really kind of mimic the Carolina offense that he had when he had Greg Olsen and Steve Smith Sr. Now, again, I don't think Nelson Aguilar or Kendrick Bourne are 75% of the player that Steve Smith Sr. was. But if they can bring that style of offense back and kind of plug Mac into it a little bit more, couldn't you see that? Could you see it being kind of a quarterback by committee if they're trying to run this Tom Brady style offense of the past with Cam Newton having Mac Jones waiting in the wings?
Who's the starter?
That's a great question. I'll tell you what.
Like, if you're going to utilize both of them, as I think you're saying, who starts and who comes in? How does the dynamic work?
I don't think that's a Bill style. I don't think Bill wants to do it. I don't think he likes that style because he's had opportunities in the past to do it. And this conversation came up when they had Garoppolo and Brady, and Brady was aging. And at that time, Cam is aging less gracefully than Tom was at 32 years old, as we all know. But I think right now, I hate to say it, and Mike's going to smile when I say it, but it's a Cam Newton offense.
I think to quickly answer your theoretical question, Karen, because I love this question because you're there, I'm not. I think Bill loves Cam. I think because Cam's done all the right things. So in that instance, he would start Cam so that Cam gets paid the incentives in his contract. But I think, let's just say that this happens. It's just the weirdest universe of all time.
Already is.
Yeah, I think. Would you ever see a situation where Bill would say, okay, well, Cam, I like you, doing all the right things. You're going to start, you're going to get paid. But the plays are going to be 75-25 for you, Cam. So Mac's going to be in there for 6 plays, 7 plays a game.
Yeah, there's been discussion about that. But again, the dynamic, if Cam is the starter and they bring Mac in, but here's the thing. Cam's actually helps the offense in the red zone with his mobility. So let's would you have him move him all the way down the field and then hand off to Mac Jones? Or do you flip it the other way around? Have Mac move it all the way down the field and then bring Cam in as a Taysom Hill type of weapon?
That offends me less. Not that I'm offended by it, but I think that would offend Patriots fans less to do it that way. And I think that would be something that the Mac Jones would understand more.
Right. Well, I don't, here's the problem with all that. I don't see Cam Newton going along with that scenario.
It's so interesting you mentioned that because as we're talking about this, I'm like, Cam Newton's he's not a top 10 quarterback anymore. But 5 years ago, he was top 10. He was one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He won the MVP. He went to a Super Bowl. He's not some, journeyman quarterback and speaking of journeyman quarterback, I wish Hoyer never got hurt when he was with the Browns because I think he would have been the best Browns quarterback since
Tim Couch.
No, it was Gerback. But anyway, moving on. But going back to it, it's the same thing. So we have to treat Cam the same way we would treat any other starting quarterback in New England. It's just the way we have to do it. It never would have happened under Tom Brady that he would have been okay with it. So why should we expect Cam to be okay with it?
It happened under Bledsoe though, right? Right, Karen? Do you remember the 2000 season? Yeah, of course you do. The 2000 season, I think Michael Bishop was in there for what? Was it 18 different plays that year? And he was the Hail Mary guy. So
right.
Bill's done it before.
Very true.
In year one.
Sure.
But again, the dynamic of it, but Drew was still the guy.
Right.
But does it make sense? Again, if Cam's still the guy and you bring in Mac for 15% of the plays, which 15% of the plays are those?
Yeah.
The kneel downs.
Yeah. Okay, let me put this another way or present an interesting dynamic. Okay. I think obviously Bill Belichick likes Cam Newton, likes him personally, and it's been sticking by him as a player. But I think part of that is Cam kind of he was one of the first mobile quarterbacks. I mean, a lot of people are getting credit for it now, but he was, he was Lamar Jackson before Lamar Jackson. And I think Bill knows how much harder it is to defend a mobile quarterback like a Cam Newton, because guess what? He has to defend Lamar Jackson. He's had to defend somebody like a Patrick Mahomes, who will kill him running the football if he lets him. So all of these mobile quarterbacks basically take away a defender on defense because somebody has to account for the quarterback. And I think since Bill knows how tough that is to do, to defend these mobile guys, well, why don't I have one? It'd make it harder for the defense. Because obviously when he had Brady, did the safety have to play up? Did the linebacker have to spy Brady because he was going to take up? No. They could flood the zones, all of his passing zones. But the reason why it didn't matter because Brady was so damn good. And their offense was predicated on quick read, quick passing, get the ball out, and it fit Brady to a T. And him being smart and being able to read defenses was also in line with that. Mac Jones is not Tom Brady, but he is a carbon copy of that type of quarterback. And I think Josh McDaniels is completely enamored with Mac Jones. So do you have Bill on one side, the Cam guy, because what Cam can do and how he can impact a defense, and you have Mac Jones, who basically is the perfect fit for Josh McDaniels' offense. So that's why I find this all fascinating.
It is fascinating. And now we talk about the quarterbacks and if they'll be ready. To the best of your knowledge, and I want to ask it that way, Sloan, because you're not an employee of the New England Patriots, but is Cam Newton healthy enough to run the offense the way they want him to run the offense?
Well, he's definitely looked different during training camp, different meaning better.
Yeah.
But what's the degree of better? I mean, there was been a couple of days when he was incredibly accurate that you would go, wow. And then the next day it would be more toward the Cam you saw last year. Couldn't hit the side of a barn door. So, but the instances of the barn door have been much fewer and far between. I mean, the reason why Mac Jones isn't above him right now is because Cam has kind of been holding him off and has done a good enough job in training camp to this point to hold off the kid.
That must be great in the coach's offices when Josh and Bill go back and forth and one of them has a good day over the other one. But you mentioned Bill being, the Cam guy and Josh being the Mac guy, Cam backwards. But now, one thing we talked about on the last time you were on was Robert Kraft talking about how other people in the room were going to have more of a hand in what was going on in the front office than they had in the past. But Bill, not that Bill was going to take a back seat, but more people were going to be involved. I think because of what you said about Josh McDaniels being enamored with Mac, we can say that Mac Jones pick was one of those instances where people were a little more involved. Is Josh McDaniels' voice going to be bigger in those game planning sessions and allow him to have a little more control over his offensive side of the ball? And I don't want to say at one position or the other, because I kind of mean this everywhere on offense, because right now we all know there needs to be a revamp of this offense. So I don't want to say, is he going to overstep Bill and put Mac under center? That's not what I'm asking, but is he going to have more of a say in the game plan offensively?
Josh, he's always had. I think Bill pretty much just says you handle the offense. And and last year, that's sort of how it had to be, because there were so many missing people from defense, and whether it was opt-outs or injuries or whatnot, that Bill's focus had to be on trying to put the defense together. Okay, Josh, you handle the offense. I mean, that's Josh's baby, just like defense is Bill's baby. But, in saying Mac is Josh's guy and Cam's Bill's guy, Bill has a set of eyes too. And he sees what's happening in practice. And I have to think that what he's seen from Mac Jones has intrigued him, to the point where, yeah, give him more. Let's see what he can do. I mean, Bill's all about putting the team in the best position to win. And if ultimately he thinks Mac's that guy, maybe he would bump Mac over his guy. And for a couple of reasons. No, he doesn't like playing rookies. That's kind of a given.
Right.
But we've seen Belichick adapt. I mean, he adapted some of his coaching style. Whatever worked in Cleveland, he tried to fix and change. I mean, he had the guys out playing cornhole together. I mean, on a group outing. I mean, it's like he's done things to try and change it up so he's not so set in his ways. And while we're all assuming he'll never play a rookie at quarterback, ever, it's typically his MO, I think he can bend. And I also, in the back of his mind, is the Brady thing. And he needs to put the Patriots in the best position to win. And I don't think he's going to be blind to Mac Jones just because he's a rookie.
You just brought that up, the Brady thing. So I'm so happy that you did. I have a two-part question. One, in your time in, covering major Boston sports and covering the New England Patriots, has there ever been a more anticipated regular season game than that of the Week 4 matchup when the GOAT comes back to the farm? Number one. And number two, is there any chance that Belichick starts Mac Jones before that game?
That's a great question. Some people think it would be wise to have Mac Jones avoid that game. And that's where the people in Cam's camp think, start Cam. The first couple of games are easy. Build some momentum, get crushed Week 4, and then bring the kid in. So I don't know.
I think we save everybody the hassle and just start Brian Hoyer that game.
Doesn't that scenario accomplish two different things, right? Let's say that the Patriots, because their first 3 games are quote unquote easy, right? If you could say that going into that Week 4 matchup, there's a real possibility that the Patriots and the Bucs are both 3-0. Let's say they get trounced by the Buccaneers, which I fundamentally believe will happen. Then they bench Cam. Cam's 3-1 as a starter in 2021, had a pretty good year, but they benched him for the next guy. Doesn't that set Cam up for an okay position to go find himself a starting job next year?
I must interject though, just so you guys know. I predicted an upset Week 4.
Oh my!
I'm thinking either it's going to be a slaughter by Tampa Bay, which probably will happen. But you know what? It would not shock me or surprise me one bit if the Patriots won that game. And as much as Brady knows the defense and knows, Belichick, the reverse is true too.
Yep.
Belichick knows what his weaknesses are, or knows how to get to him and knows how to rattle him. And he brought in pass rushers. He brought in guys who were in the middle of the line. And we've seen Brady vulnerable if they could penetrate up the middle. All I'm saying is, if anyone knows a blueprint how to beat Brady, it would be Belichick.
Well, Bill built him. I mean, Mike, sure, he came in pre-built, but he added the parts. But you know what I see that game in, and we saw it back in the late 2000s and the undefeated season was one down lineman and the other 6 of the front 7 floating around the ball and floating around and not kind of being an amoeba defense and not showing what's going to come in order to confuse the old man across the other side. You know, I think that's a possibility. I think I actually meant that now that I've thought about it, that Hoyer should probably start that game.
No, stop it.
Why?
I agree with Karen here. This is a classic Patriots underdog game. It will either be a blowout or the Patriots will win by 3. That's it. They will either lose by 20 or they will win by 3. That's
40. Yeah.
right. But that's like that Baltimore game last year. That's how that feels. It's going into it. You're like, all right, this will either be the worst game that you've ever witnessed, or we might win.
Every beat writer is going to have a field day with that one if the Patriots can pull that off.
Right.
Yeah. So one of the things that the Patriots have really done that we've already kind of touched on this offseason, they've really retooled that offense. They have that that 2-headed monster at tight end. I actually was on the air on this show the night before the Patriots picked him up and saying, I'm so glad they picked up Jonnu Smith. Hunter Henry, 6'5", 265, made of glass. Direct quote. Next day they signed him. Do you have any concerns with his ability to stay healthy in terms of the Patriots' success this year, Karen?
Well, the fact that he's injured now and tends to get injured would lead you to believe that. But, I mean, I don't know. If people think guys are injury prone or whatever, the Patriots would have signed them. I mean, I think Bill Belichick has loved Hunter Henry for many years. And, we'll see how it plays out. But there's no question that their success as an offense is going to be predicated on both of those tight ends being healthy. And again, it's the whole picture. It's the offensive line. It's their running game. It's the tight ends. And also, again, with the running game expected to be good, that is going to set up quite a bit of play action. And I mean, things like that help a quarterback. It would help Cam Newton. It would help Mac Jones if everyone bites on the run because they're a successful running team. And that opens up so many more avenues. So again, their offense is going to be run first, shove it down your throat, and that will allow them to set up the passing game.
Along those same lines, because before we talk about the first preseason game tomorrow night, or tonight for those of you listening on Thursday, I think the Patriots have not always, but they have made some pretty notable either trades or cuts in the preseason that really just kind of baffle you. And you just mentioned the running game. So I have a question for you. I'm going to give you my answer and I'm going to ask a question. I think it's James White. Who might be a surprise cut or trade in the preseason?
Well, I've seen the James White things. I mean, Sony Michel is another one.
Oh, I hope it's Sony Michel.
What's that?
I said I hope it's Sony Michel. You can't say that, but I'll say it. I hope it's it.
Especially for, a team there's teams out there that are losing running backs. Hello, Rams.
Yep.
And that might net you something in return. But here's my word of caution on dumping James White or even dumping Sony Michel, because their offense is going to revolve around the running game. And, we're going back to the kind of short dumps, whether it's to the tight end or to the running backs. I would just be cautious before getting rid of Sony Michel or James White for those very reasons. If Damian Harris gets hurt, okay, who's your back? And chances are, running backs get hurt. Damian Harris got hurt last year. Sony Michel's always hurt. So what are you going to do? I mean, okay, Brandon Bolden, you're going to lead the charge.
Oh no.
I do love Brandon Bolden, but I would rather see Sony Michel go over Brandon Bolden if we're just going out of the backfield. But to that end, and I don't think it's going to be James White for the exact reasons you just mentioned, Karen. I think that he is that back that is going to, again, same thing that Cam kind of had in Carolina, and somebody that Tom had towards the end of his time here was James White.
You need to know.
Yeah, he's that veteran guy. So, originally my next question was going to be, do the Patriots need another wideout? But I'm gonna rephrase that. Could you see them trading N'Keal Harry for another piece in the backfield, or trying to package something for a better wideout that might fit the system better?
They would not get that in return.
Sure. No, that's fine. That's why they asked.
They'll be lucky to get a 6th-round pick.
That's such a nice way for you to say that, Karen.
I don't disagree with you, because I had that actually as my first. Actually, Mike and I.
Wouldn't it be great? Like, geez.
Mike and I.
Michael Thomas for N'Keal Harry and a pick right now.
No, yeah, that's never. Yeah, right. Yeah, hey, listen, Taysom Hill needs somebody to throw to. Why would you want it to be Michael Thomas when it can be N'Keal Harry? But that was actually the first thing Mike and I had written here, like N'Keal Harry, is he a real wide receiver threat, or will he be traded? That's a direct quote. But based on your answer there, probably neither.
No, I wouldn't say that. I think the Patriots actually like that he sort of flashed in camp, but my caution there, and he's put together his best 2-3 week stretch, counting any training camp or any regular season in these past couple of weeks. But my caution there is he's made all these highlight reel, I mean, literally these remarkable athletic type of catches during like one-on-one drills. Meaning it's just him against the defensive back, and the quarterback heaves it up there. And I mean, it plays to his strength. His reputation was as a contested catch monster. And he's shown that when they get into team drills and they're going 11 on 11 and 7 on 7, he's pretty much been invisible.
Great. So he's Chad Ochocinco. That's what he is. Wait.
Again, that's my caution. Look, he's looked better. I mean, he wasn't even making these plays in any training camp. So, that's a positive, and that's a good thing, because you do see the ability there. But once it's like a real competition, 11 on 11, 7 on 7, he still struggles to get open.
I know we're going down a rabbit hole, and I don't want to go too far down it, but I have a conspiracy theory that I want to float by you, Karen, if that's okay.
Yeah.
What are the odds that Bill is making sure that N'Keal Harry looks good in those one-on-one drills to increase his trade value?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if he can set it up where Harry is making all these diving catches, flipping over and doing what he's been doing. But I think, let's remember, the two of them had a little chat right after Harry's agent went out public with a trade request. And I think whatever Bill said to Harry kind of made him come to camp, but also changed his attitude in some way. So whether Bill's motive was to build him up and build him up too, so that he would perform better, so that he could get his butt out of town in a trade, maybe.
I think Bill is still a big fan of N'Keal Harry because of that conversation he had with him. So, we could talk about that as fans and beat writers and everything else, like what we've seen. But I think a lot of other times, if an agent, now he's always going to go and have that conversation with the player, because that's just the kind of guy that Bill is. And when that story came out from Harry's agent, I was a little surprised that was floated publicly, because that's not something that happens coming out of the Patriots locker room. And you just don't see that. So I think him having that conversation with N'Keal was a little more to try and get him, as you said, which it worked, get him to come to camp and be all in.
Can I flip and be a little bit of a devil's advocate, though?
Please.
Would you think Belichick would have that same type of conversation with a 5th-round receiver?
No, and that's why I said it, because I think
he's only first-round receiver.
Right.
Ever. So I think there's a little different dynamic going on there.
We've heard Bill's his hoorah speech. He knows how to get players motivated, right? Like we all know about how he read the Pittsburgh Steelers parade route to the team. I could literally envision Bill bringing N'Keal Harry to the room. Again, this is Mike. This is not Karen or Joe. Saying like, all right, so we floated some offers for you out there, and all we got in return was some Burt's Bees. You're not worth anything, so like go out there and prove it. And now N'Keal Harry is showing up like a number 2 wide receiver in the league. I just wouldn't put it past Bill. He's a great motivator.
Yeah, as I said, something happened. All of a sudden, you're seeing a different N'Keal Harry. Again, I don't want to totally minimize what he's doing in one-on-ones. I mean, you still have to make the plays, and he's made the plays. But he still has the problems that we've seen in, basically getting off the line and getting open during these 11-on-11 and 7-on-7 sessions.
So speaking of receivers having a tough time getting off the line, switching sides of the ball, on defense, have there been any developments defensively that show that this team is ready to go this year on defense? And then the second part of that question is Stephon Gilmore.
Well, I can tell you the front 7 has been very impressive. So impressive that Trent Brown, it's basically boasting about them because he has to stop the Judons of the world from getting in the Josh Uches from getting in the backfield. And Trent Brown keeps telling us that this defense is going to be special because, again, he has to go up against this front 7 every day. The secondary without Gilmore is lacking, and it's very obvious. I mean, J.C. Jackson has been fine, but again, if you move the 2 to number 1, then you're putting some other guy as a number 2. And thus far, the outside boundaries receiver opposite Jackson, whether it's Jalen Mills, who's just trying to learn the defense, or Jawan Williams, they've struggled. And again, if that's what you're starting with, if Brady is going to pick that side apart, he will go down that way every single time. I mean, that's the difference of having Gilmore on one side and J.C. Jackson on the other. There's no real gappage. They have a gap without Gilmore.
Will that gap be filled, and will it be Stephon Gilmore?
I have to believe it. I mean, my brain tells me, Bill Belichick didn't put together and spend all this money and get this type of defense to have a fatal flaw at one corner, or have a fatal flaw because he's undermanned, because he doesn't have the elite shutdown corner. I think J.C. Jackson is good. I'm just not ready to call him a legitimate shutdown corner. I mean, he had 9 interceptions, but a lot of that is because they're avoiding Gilmore and going to his side. And he's not playing the top guy. When he had to fill in for Gilmore last year, Stephon Diggs torched him. So again, there's a difference.
That's really good.
J.C. Jackson covering the number 2 and J.C. Jackson covering the number 1.
You'd have to think that Bill knows he's never won a championship without a number 1 corner.
Right.
Ever. He's just never done it, right? So I think he'll smarten up. I don't like holdouts. I don't like contract disputes. We know what happened to Logan Mankins. The one thing that I'll ask you about is, so I have a little bit of PTSD from 2007, right? I think we all do. Matt Judon to me feels a lot like Adelius Thomas. So Karen, I need you to tell me why this is not going to be the same situation, and tell me that you've seen things because you were there for Adelius, right?
Will you bring back the Jetsons? Remember that? He got sent away because he didn't get there in a snowstorm, and he said, "What do you mean? I'm going to get like the Jetsons and fly here?" I mean, that was like the best Adelius Thomas moment. I'm sorry. We regress, or I digress.
No, you're fine. But I when I think of an outside roaming linebacker from Baltimore that you spend a lot of money on, he's the first guy that comes to mind. So for Patriot fans like me out there, what have you seen so far in camp, right, that leads you to believe that he will fit in this system?
Well, he looks like a perfect fit, but it's so weird. So Dallas Thomas, but I think Dallas Thomas basically. Here's the thing with Bill Belichick and defense, and it applied to Jamie Collins too. You're going to do what Bill Belichick tells you, and you're going to play your position the way Bill Belichick wants you to. No freelancing, right? I think Dallas Thomas was a freelancer. Jamie Collins was a freelancer and got sent away. When he came back, he stopped the freelancing because he finally got it. Bill Belichick's defenses are so specific that everyone has to do their thing. And if someone kind of breaks rank, everything, is amiss. Do I think Judon seems more in line with doing what Belichick says? I do. So, but we'll see.
Good. Thank you. That's all I needed to hear.
Belichick hasn't. I mean, I know we're in the day of inflated salaries, but Judon represents the most Belichick has ever spent on a defensive player, free agent wise. So we'll see. And as I said when we were chatting earlier, I like his makeup. I like Matt Judon's makeup, and he seems to get it. So we'll see. Maybe I'll be proven wrong.
Craig, go ahead. I know you got something to say.
I just want to sidebar real quick since we brought up Dallas Thomas. There aren't a lot of singular plays that I remember because I've watched football for a long time, like we all have. When I think of Dallas Thomas, I still think back in 2009 when Brett Favre was on the Jets and the Dallas Thomas just destroying him like 40 yards back in the backfield that one play. I love the Dallas Thomas on the Patriots. He's one of my favorites.
Well, he actually, to be fair, I mean, he was actually very good in the playoffs for them one year. He might have been their best player.
It was 07, right?
Yeah. But again, it's just that he and Belichick clashed. Dallas saw himself doing, playing the way he wanted in the defense or doing what he wanted to do in the defense. Whereas, Belichick tries to put him in positions to succeed or positions that would best help the defense collectively. It might not have been where Dallas wanted to play, but in Bill's mind, this is where he was needed. And I think that's where a lot of the clashing took place.
Yeah, that was just so. I think Judon is obviously they're different players, right? But if you look at the tape, so much of the stats that really got him paid were predicated on the fact that he saw something and he did it, which made me believe that he was a freelancer. And I know that Belichick, as you mentioned, Belichick's defense is predicated on the fact that if everyone does what he thinks that they're going to do, it'll hold up. If one person doesn't, then you've exposed a whole side of the field. So that was my one concern. He's super talented. So is Dallas Thomas. But I'm glad to hear that you think that as of this point, he's someone that will fall in rank and do what he's supposed to do. That makes me feel really good.
He sounds like, well, I don't know. Again, you can talk a good game and sound like you're buying in. But for now, he sounds like he's buying in.
He's a really nice guy. Some would say sweet as apple pie. Go ahead, Joe.
So, it's interesting talking about this preseason. We've kind of thrown out some names of guys that have not fallen in line. The Adalius Thomases. Mike brought up Chad Johnson. I refuse to call him the other name, even though it was legal. But we head into the preseason with the New England Patriots, the NFL preseason, which started last week with a riveting game between the Dallas Cowboys and the Pittsburgh Steelers in Canton, Ohio. Nothing like watching Ben DiNucci have a tough time in a preseason game. But besides the point, the New England Patriots take on the Washington football team on August 12th. They'll also take on the Eagles and the Giants, both on the road. Then a week off, and then they start the season against the Dolphins for a 17-game season. Looking at the preseason, what can we expect in these three games in, knowledge that you can share with us, what can we expect in these 3 games, and what positives and negatives coming out of camp can we see? And then to that end, you're always very good at going along and being able to retain the questions, because I never could. Does this seem like a looser camp and a looser preseason to you for a Bill Belichick coach team?
Loose isn't a word I would put in the same sentence with Bill Belichick.
Fair.
No, I mean, it's been pretty straightforward. They've had their little rookie hazing, watering them down and have them slip and slide. I mean, we've seen a lot of the usual type things, but I mean, it's different. I mean, again, coming off what they did last year or what they had to go through last year to, most of their work was done indoors, in a virtual meetings, and the fact that they're outdoors trying to take advantage of, the time they have. They actually have preseason games. There's one fewer. So I'm not sure how Bill Belichick is going to attack having 3 instead of 4. Usually most of the starters would play in the 3rd, and that's where you would get the most action. And then all the scrubs played in the 4th game. So I'm not sure quite how it's going to shake out, except, I mean, he has some decisions to make, and quarterback being the most important one. And it was very telling that, without Cam Newton having the benefit of any preseason games, in the long run, that had an impact, even though, I mean, he looked good early in the year. I think the bigger tells, or the bigger intel gathering for Belichick, are going to be the joint practices. They have sessions with the Eagles before the Eagles game and with the Giants before the Giants games. And I think Bill really loves him some joint practices. And I think that might even give him even more information than a preseason game.
So I just have one more question, Karen, because I know that we can go down so many more rabbit holes here. Obviously, Super Bowl, it is the ultimate sign of success, right? And I don't know how many of us think that could happen this year. My question to you is, just to tie back to the first question that Joe asked about, will Bill push harder because of Tom Brady's Super Bowl win? As someone who's around the team all the time and has covered the team for so long, in that perspective, what does success look like for the New England Patriots this year?
Make it the playoffs. I mean, doing what they didn't do last year, kind of getting their hat back in the ring and, basically restoring some faith and restoring their reputation as a contending team. I don't expect them to get to the Super Bowl. I'm not even sure they'll get to the AFC Championship, but it's kind of getting back on the horse or getting back on the bike and basically trying to restore what was lost last year.
So do you think that the Patriots have, again, 17-win season, no one below 11-5 made it to the playoffs last year. We would need to win 12 games. Do you think that this team, as currently constituted, again, my last question, is a 12-5, is a 12-win team?
I think they're right around 11. I mean, but again, look, the schedule doesn't scare me.
No.
At least their schedule. And I don't think they're going to go 3-3 against the AFC East like they did last year. I mean, let's say they go 4-2. Okay, there's one more win there. Some of their opponents, I mean, they play Carolina. They play Jacksonville. I mean, you can just sort of add in, do we think the Saints are going to beat them in Foxborough? Do we think the Cowboys are going to beat them in Foxborough? I mean, I know playing at home wasn't what it once was when Tom Brady was here, but I still think it factors in with these teams having to travel and come to Foxborough. So if you go game by game and game by game by game by game, you can see 10, 11, 12 if they're lucky. So they'll be right there on the cusp.
Yeah, Buffalo and Tampa, those 3 games are the ones that kind of are the most intimidating. I guess is the word.
Cleveland and Tennessee are tough too. That's why I can find 11 wins.
Cleveland's going to be tough. Tennessee, I don't know if it's going to be as tough.
I have them. I think I have them losing to Tennessee, and I have them losing to Cleveland. But there's some road games. Indy's quarterback situation. I wouldn't be surprised if the Patriots went in there and won that game. I think the Chargers are going to be much tougher this year out there. So that game's kind of a coin flip. But if the Patriots win their share of the coin flips, again, they're going to be right there. But, I see them splitting their games with Buffalo as opposed to going 0-2.
Sure.
See them splitting with Miami because that's typically what they do. I see them sweeping the Jets. So, again, you're starting with 4. Looking through the schedule, I can get them up to 10 or 11.
And 11-6 is going to be, I think that's the mark. And I know, Mike, you said 12-5. I think that 11-6 is that mark to, will Buffalo win the division? It's possible. Will the Patriots go in as a wild card? It's very possible. But I agree with you. I don't think the Jets are a threat yet. I like what Robert Saleh is going to do down there.
I like what the Jets are doing, but they're not, they're really in rebuild mode. And they're actually, again, they seem to finally have a clue. In years past, no clue. And with all the draft capital they have and all the cap space they have, if they've turned it around as much as they have this year and do so again next year, again, 2022, 2023 is when the Jets will be a player again.
This is just a weird hypothetical, but because of all the lore surrounding the Jacksonville Jaguars, who would one game? Obviously, the Jets get the Patriots twice, but one game, Patriots play the Jets, Patriots play the Jaguars. Who's got a better chance of beating the New England Patriots, the Jaguars or the Jets, as currently constituted?
Yes.
I know. It's a weird question. It's a very weird question.
Well, here's how I'm going to answer it. How do first-year quarterbacks do against Bill Belichick typically?
Terribly.
Look at all the first-year quarterbacks on the schedule. That's another thing.
Yeah.
That's a great segue. Thanks for picking me up there, Karen.
And they actually, again, if it was their defense last year, I would still give them a chance because of Belichick's smarts. But trust me, their front seven it's like night and day from last year. Night and day. And again, the front seven is where it's happening for all those weird formations and amoeba and whatever the heck they do. Trevor Lawrence's head's going to be spinning. Zach Wilson's head's going to be spinning. All these first-year quarterbacks and some second-year quarterbacks. I mean, just because Sam Darnold's in Carolina, you don't think he's still not going to see ghosts? Really? So, again, that's what I look at.
So when you say front seven, are we talking like 2003, Ted Washington, Richard Seymour, Vince Wilfork, Ted Johnson, Teddy Bruschi, Roosevelt Colvin front seven? Or
I'm not going to put him there yet.
Well, that was going to kind of be where I went, because when you said that, Mike, I was thinking the same thing. It's going to be more of an early 2000s style defense with a late 2000s, no Randy Moss, like 10-11 style offense.
To what you saw in the Rams Super Bowl.
Oh, okay.
Defensively?
Yeah. And think of the defense after surrendering whatever it did in that Atlanta Super Bowl. Playmaking, buzzing around, harassing type of defense that will give quarterbacks fits.
And that will bode well, not only with Bill Belichick's record against first and second year quarterbacks, but also just the fact that he's a good defensive coach. And if he's got the players, they're going to.
Well, that's the whole, and again, that's the other part that's really intriguing to me. I want to see what he does with the parts, because again, his genius is defense. There's little doubt about that. A lot of his game plans are in the Hall of Fame for what he's done to these elite offenses in Super Bowls. So he's assembled a much better crew than last year. And I think he's going to have a ball with it, assuming everybody stays healthy and assuming he gets Gilmore on board.
which is going to be a big factor, is getting Gilmore on board. But yeah, as you say it now, I'm even more excited than I was to begin this show, because as I can tell you, like you said before, you don't know like how much the crowd might play into it in Foxborough. I can tell you, as not only a New England Revolution season ticket holder, but as a Patriots season ticket holder, I cannot wait even to walk into that stadium for the preseason game against Washington, just to get those guys back on the field and see them run out of the tunnel again and see it live and do it live. Because I think that's something that Bill's going to play off of. And we know that he tries to drown out the noise and he cancels the noise for his players. But I think having 9 home games instead of 8 in the regular season, having the crowd back and having that noise around Cam or Mac or whoever it is, that's going to play into this entire season. I think that's going to make it a lot more fun.
And add in the fact, I think on both sides of the ball, because of their offensive line and their defensive front, they're going to be a really physically taxing and wearing team on other teams. So all these teams who are going to be traveling to Foxborough for those 9 games are going to be in a dogfight and a trench war. And if you're not up for it, the Patriots going to roll all over you. And again, that's how this team has been built. Both lines, offensive line, defensive line. They've been built in the trenches. It's a classic Belichick team. Yeah, go back to 2000, the early 2000s. They're going to beat you on the ground and on defense, primarily.
That's what we love to hear. We love to hear that, and that gets me fired up. So, Craig, we got a lot of good sound bites there. We're gonna eat all those up.
Oh, I've got my soundbite. As soon as he said the Buccaneers are going to lose Week 4 at Gillette Stadium, that was it. It's over.
Love that.
Great, get her in trouble. Well, Karen, thank you again for joining us on Missing the Point. Another great conversation, as Mike and I have said multiple times this show. We could go on. We actually have a whole nother list of just quarterback storylines that we could totally go over with you, but we'll bypass those and hopefully see some of those come to fruition and iron themselves out as the season goes. Karen Guriegien, thank you again. I'm Joe Malkin, joined again by Craig D'Alessandro and Mike Marcangelo. Thank you for joining us on Missing the Point. And, well, we're going to say it because Karen's got me fired up. Go Patriots.
Hey there, I'm DC. I host the Rock Podcast, Back to the Arena, The Interviews. It's about a 30-minute podcast where I talk one-on-one with a band who has released new music. You can find us on all the best podcast sites like Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeartRadio, and more. If you're a rock fan like me, subscribe today to Back to the Arena, The Interviews.
Electricast.
Hey, what's happening out there, everybody? This is Lawrence Ross, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about my podcast, The Lawrence Ross Show.
Egomaniac.
It's a 2-hour weekly exploration into my mind. I also do sketches, celebrity impersonations.
You're out of order!
And I also do song parodies. Not too shabby for a blind guy.
Not only are you visually impaired, but you are geographically impaired.
New episodes are released every Friday. Check it out on your favorite podcasting platform or listen to it here on Society 13 on Electricast.
Electricast.